Hey, CrossFitters, welcome back. It's Coach Bob here, CrossFit Glen Burnie, and today we're going to be talking about a 5,000 meter row, and I'm going to help you to figure out what your pace should be on this 5,000 meter row. Now, this information I'm going to give you can also be helpful in any longer distance events. If you know your time on a shorter distance event, I'm going to show you how you can effectively calculate your pace on that longer distance event. Now, if you have like the Army 2 mile run, this can also be very helpful in figuring out what pace you should be training at to be able to complete that 2 mile run. So let's jump in together, and I'm going to show you a couple of calculators that you can use to figure out your total pace for tomorrow's 5,000 meter row. So we know that the workout tomorrow starts with a 5,000 meter row, and then we have 25 minutes to finish that, and whatever time is left, you basically get to do wall balls. So we can go to the Concept 2 website, and we can get a pace calculator up there. You can search for pace calculator Concept 2, and it's going to take you right to it. Basically, the way this calculator works, let's say that we know the distance, 5,000 meters. Let's say we don't know how fast we need to row, but we know what time we want to get off the rower, which is the coach might say, hey, let's make sure we have 2 to 3 minutes left on the clock to do our wall balls. So what we can do in here then is, let's say it's 23 minutes, then we can calculate our split time. And that would mean that we need to row a constant 2 minutes and 18 seconds to finish with 23 minutes so that we have 2 minutes to do our wall balls. If we wanted to get off and have 3 minutes for wall balls, really no. If you wanted to have 22, let's put this back here, 22, then we can calculate our split time. We have to knock 6 seconds off of our pace. And so our pace for our 500 meter has to be 2 minutes and 12 seconds. This is fine if you know that you can row 2 minutes and 12 seconds for 5,000 meters. But most of the time, we don't have a good idea how what our sustainable pace is going to be. Because we know, right? We know that when we do a longer event, we start to get that fatigue, that endurance fatigue factor kind of sets in. And as that distance gets longer, we know our pace slows down no matter how hard we try. So if we go really fast, let's say we're rowing for 5,000 meters or running for 2 miles. If we go really fast on that first quarter mile, first 500 meters or so, we know that we were going to get winded, and our pace on the next one's going to drop down significantly. And then the pace on the one after that is going to drop down even more. So you would be much better off for either of those events, whether it's a 5,000 meter row or a 2 mile run, you would be much better off knowing what pace you'd be able to sustain for every quarter mile, or every 500 meters. So you would go in and you would not experience that fatigue because it's your sustainable pace. It's a pace that you can complete every lap at that pace consistently without a problem for that duration. And maybe you can kick a little bit in the end and save a few seconds, but you have that confidence to know what you can do. Well, if we haven't done a 2 mile run recently, or if we haven't done the 5K row or 5,000 meter row, then how do we know how to pace it? Now, that's the question I'm going to help you to answer. Okay. So let's go back to here. Chris Hinshaw in the Aerobic Capacity Specialty course shared with us this formula. So it's the Pete Regal running formula. And so your time on your event that you're trying to figure out is related to your time on some, maybe a shorter event times the ratio of the two distances taken to this fatigue factor as a coefficient. So you basically take it to that power. Now, I put this formula into a spreadsheet, and so we can play around with it a little bit and kind of get some numbers out there, so that might help you out for tomorrow's event. And also, the main point here is to develop some intuition around what happens whenever the distance doubles, right? So for every doubling of that distance, we know that that fatigue factor is going to start to play a larger and larger role. Intuitively, we know that if our absolute fastest pace that we could sustain for a 500-meter row is, let's say, 1 minute and 45 seconds, then we know we can't row 5,000 meters as 10 times 1 minute 45 seconds, right? Because if we rode the first one at our fastest all-out possible pace, the second 500 meters is going to be so slow. And the third minute, you're just going to fall off the row, or you probably won't even finish, right? So we can hope we can finish, right? Instead, we kind of intuitively know we got to go in a little softer so that we can finish the entire event at a reasonable pace. Okay, so that's the formula. Here's some numbers. I put in a fatigue factor of about 10%. Now, 10% is for somebody who has a fairly well-developed aerobic system. And it also relates to the relationship between your different energy systems. So if you are an endurance athlete, then 10% is probably the right number. But if you're a CrossFit athlete, the right number is probably closer to 20%. And the reason that is because CrossFitters tend to have a stronger glycolytic energy system. So they're better at the sprinty kind of events, the shorter distances, than they are at the longer distances. So any number between 10, 20, 25, even 30% you could enter in here. So how does that play out? Well, let's see. We put in 10, we put in 20. Okay. All right, so we're going to go with 20. So if I row a 500 meter, my fastest 500 meter, if it is 2 minutes, then my 1K row is going to be a pace of 2 minutes and 18 seconds. And my 2K row, the overall pace is probably going to be about 2:38. And so on for my 4K and 5K. You can see a significant decrease in or increase in the amount of time. Your pace is getting slower and slower with those longer distances because we just don't have that aerobic system. Well, chances are you are actually able to row a faster 500 meters than that 2 minutes. So let's change this to a minute 45 pace. Okay, so if I go to a minute and 45 pace on there, then you can see with that 20% factor, I still have a pace that's over 2 minutes and 45 seconds for a 5,000 meter. Maybe my fatigue factor is closer to 10%. So look at this. If your fastest 500 meter is a minute 45, then your fastest 1K is about a minute 53, or your total time of 3:45. Have you tried to row your fastest 1K time? And compare these numbers here, and you'll be able to kind of dial in what your fatigue factor is. You can also run a test, excuse me, where you do a short distance like a 500 meter row and a 2,000 meter row, and then you can calculate precisely what your fatigue factor is. And you can use that to dial it in. So somebody that has a strong 500 meter pace of 500 meter row of 145 is going to be able to hold and sustain somewhere around a 2 minute and 12 second 5,000 meter. Now it's going to be on the definitely on the uncomfortable side. So you may decide to hold off a little bit on that, maybe add 10 seconds across the board. So this would be a 2 minute and 22 second pace. Now we know 2 minute and 22 second pace we can use this calculator and calculate the time. That's 23 minutes and 40 seconds for that 5K row. And then you're going to basically only have 1 minute and 20 seconds left to do wall balls. So guys, just wanted to give you some intuition on how you can think about your pacing and how it will decrease with time with the increasing of the distance, and how that's based on a lot of the research and development that Chris Hinshaw and others have done with running. And we can apply this to a lot of our endurance type sports. We know that there is a fatigue factor. And so you might be able to do that first round nice and fast, or that first 500 meters, but can you sustain that? What's your sustainable pace? And just getting in tune with what you can sustain will help you to better calculate ahead of time, or on the floor when you're ready to do the workout, what pace you need to be going in on that workout. Guys, thank you so much for checking us out today, joining me on this rather mathy CrossFit video. Take care. Have a good night. Peace.